Meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, in the 1820 courtroom at 26 Court Street. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote and in-person participation. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. First, this evening, I'd like to welcome our newly elected Planning Board member, Timothy Bennett. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so first we have on our agenda this evening, we have Planning Board reorganization and committee liaison member update. Typically, I'll go around the room here as the chair or the board to see who would any nominations be made, but I'd like to make the first nomination this evening, and I'd like to nominate Steve Bolton for chair. Are there any other nominations for chair of the Planning Board? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Against? Abstentions? 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Now, please take over the proceedings. And thank everybody for allowing me to be the chair for the last approximate year and a half. It was my pleasure, and I enjoyed it, and thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
I will second that. Thank you, Mr. Grandy. It has been a pleasure watching you serve as our chair. So as we continue our reorganization, then the next item is for vice chair. Do we have nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Tim as vice chair.
There we have 2 Tims. You need to be more specific now.
That is true. Mr. Grandy, please.
We have a nomination for Mr. Grandy. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will call the vote. As we are all present, all in favor of Mr. Grandy as vice chair, raise your hands, please. That is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
We have other positions. At the moment, I believe we have Mr. Donaldson serving as our clerk. Are there any nominations for someone to replace Mr. Donaldson? Seeing none, Mr. Donaldson, will you continue as our clerk?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving next, we have our committee liaisons, and well, we need to vote anyway? All right, let us vote it. All in favor of Mr. Donaldson remaining as our clerk, please raise your hand. It is unanimous.
Before you go on, I have a question.
Of course.
Do we have a clerk pro tem?
Do we have a clerk pro tem?
We do.
No, we do not.
We used to have a clerk pro tem.
We used to have a clerk pro tem. Then I think we should have a clerk pro tem. At this point, are there nominations for clerk pro tem?
I'll nominate Ms. Keene for clerk pro tem.
Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate, I don't want to accept the nomination, but I'd like to nominate Mr. Bennett then for clerk pro tem.
Okay. We have a nomination of Mr. Bennett then as clerk pro tem. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So now moving on to our assignments. First, before we jump in, so right now, Mr. Bennett is an appointed member of the Manomet Village Steering Committee. There is no prohibition on a board member serving as a member of a village steering committee. But nonetheless, we probably should limit ourselves to one board member per steering committee, given that we are limited in terms of our number of board members for those positions. Mr. Donaldson, you are currently the Manomet Village Steering Committee liaison. Would you be willing to defer that to Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Okay, then I would propose Mr. Bennett as the liaison to the Manomet Village Steering Committee. Is there anyone else who wants to serve in that position? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Moving next to the Plymouth Center Steering Committee. That is currently a vacant position. Do we have someone who wishes to serve as the Plymouth Center Steering Committee liaison?
I wish to serve as the Plymouth Center Steering Committee.
I'll nominate Carl. to
Very
the
good.
Plymouth Center Steering Committee.
We have Mr. Donaldson as a nomination. Are there any others? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. We have a vacant position as well for the Plymouth Growth and Development Corp., Park Plymouth. I don't know if that's been vacant for some time, and I don't know if we have an active participation in that body now. I'll ask staff, is there a basis as to why we have been? No. No reason. Okay. Well, then I think we should fill that position. It's a liaison position. Do we have any nominees for the PGDC?
I'll accept a position if you would nominate me.
I will nominate Ms. Keene for the PGDC. Anyone else? No? All in favor? Very good, thank you, Ms. Keene. Now, we do have an opening on the Open Space Committee. It wasn't listed on our sheet, but Mr. Donaldson had previously withdrawn from that position as a member on that committee. I think that is, again, at least for the remaining term of June 30th of this year, we can fill that temporarily and then see if someone else wants to step in beyond that. But that is a member position that we serve on. Is there anyone who is seeking that position? Seeing none, I'm willing to accept that, at least on the temporary basis, if someone will make that nomination.
I'll nominate Mr. Bolton on a temporary basis until the expiration date of June 30th of 2024.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? 24, according to our
Expires
chart.
on June 30th, 2024, on the chart I'm looking at.
Another month. I will do it for the month, and then we will have the position, at that point, the position opens. I'm willing to continue beyond that, but if someone else wants it, we will address it at that time. So please make sure that gets addressed when we go through all of our appointments at the end of June. Next, we have the Land Use and Acquisition Committee, and we have, according to this, 2 vacant positions on LUAC. And those are member positions.
Are they actually member positions, or could we nominate or fill it with somebody from the general public?
I'm not familiar with the way that's set up, but I think it's probably implied that it's either members or designees.
Designees meaning
That would-
at large, correct? Yeah.
I'll have to double check.
Why don't we defer that until next meeting, and we can address that. By that point, it's actually probably the next period. In fact, at this point, why don't we just hold that until we go to the June 30th, and at that point, we can make sure we know. We have
Mike's on, please.
Mike, yeah,
And it's right in the middle of it.
and it's a lot of feedback for the moment there.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties. So let's move on next. We have the Roads Advisory Committee is not expiring until the end of June. The Cedarville Steering Committee, Mr. Grandy is currently the liaison. I'd like, unless someone else goes, does Mr. Grandy, do you wish to continue in that role?
Yes, sir.
Then I'll nominate that Mr. Grandy remain in that role. Is there anyone else who wishes to take that liaison position? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have the West Plymouth Steering Committee, and that is currently a vacant position. Does someone wish to step into that one?
So I was vacated from that position, but I'll be willing to resume. I have a relationship with that group.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Keene then to return to the West Plymouth Steering Committee. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. And then we have the Board of Health Liaison, and that's one that I'd like to actually speak to the chair of the Board of Health about before we go about filling that, as I think we need to establish exactly what role they see with us in terms of liaison. So unless someone feels differently, I'd like to defer that to another meeting. Go ahead, Ms. Keene.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. New Chairman, I would like to at least, if you would consult me a little bit about the role, because I have more or less graded and envisioned it, I would appreciate it before you talk to the chair.
I'm more than happy to do that, and we can do that offline. That's
Thank you.
absolutely
I
fine.
appreciate that.
Thank you for that suggestion. I appreciate it. Okay.
Steve, if I could, so we're just looking at land use and acquisitions, and we have two people listed as liaisons for, or members appointed by the planning board, Virginia Davis until 2026, and we also have Joan Langson for 2025. So I think those are set.
Then we are good. Excellent. Glad to know that we haven't completely fallen down on our appointments. And then we have finally the North Plymouth Steering Committee, and that is currently my bailiwick, and I'm more than happy to continue in that if anyone, unless someone else wishes to take that on. Seeing none, then I'll nominate myself. All in favor? Fine, I'll remain on North Plymouth as liaison. And that, I believe, covers our reorganization for today. So thank you very much all for your continued volunteerism here, not just as members of this board, but for the additional responsibilities that we assume.
You can't do that. Yeah, that's right.
All the trappings.
All the trappings go with it. Here's my phone, too.
I'll use my phone for timing,
okay.
thank you.
I'll give out your number.
Okay, next on our agenda this evening is our administrative matters. We start with our administrative notes. There are currently no minutes, no covenants, plans, and releases, no Form A plans, but we do have a street name approval. It's B543 ADM Agawam Development LLC, Cranberry Farm Court. Are there any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I'd like to move a motion to accept B543 Agawam Development LLC to street name of Cranberry Farm Court.
We have a motion from Mr. Donaldson.
Second.
Second from Mr. Grandy. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next on our agenda is Red Brook Affordable Housing Update.
Good evening. I do have paper copies of the presentation if you would like those. I'm not sure if you have them, but I do have them available.
I think we would like them. Thank you.
Do you guys want one as well? Thank you. Is the presentation going on the big screen? Thank you. Good evening, newly appointed Mr. Chairman, and other members of the board. My name is Dan Gorsica, Vice President of ADM Agawam Development. I am here this evening to provide an update and a path forward to the board as it relates to the affordable housing commitment at Red Brook. For the benefit of some newer members and staff, I would like to take a moment to recap. I'd like to just take a moment to recap the affordable history and the commitment based on the special permit. As many know, the Red Brook community received its special permit in 2008, utilizing 3 bylaws: transfer development rights, inclusionary housing, and traditional rural village development bylaw. We understand that you are the permitting authority and we are the permittee, but we see this process as somewhat of a partnership. A component of this partnership includes affordable housing. The affordable housing units are based on TDR usage, and the project initially anticipated using 736 TDRs. Strictly based on the bylaws, the requirement would be to provide 74 units. And during the finalization of that special permit, as you know, the company agreed to go and provide 103 affordable units, well above the requirement. When providing affordable housing, as you know, the requirement is 80% area median income. As part of the commitment, the project always contemplated approximately 50% of the units to come from a larger assisted living community. Due to federal policy changes, the senior affordable housing is proposed instead, and an update will be discussed in a little bit more detail shortly. In addition, affordable requirements may be met with a variety of housing types, including off-site, payment in lieu, or any combination thereof, as coordinated and approved by this board. This is an update and a path forward to achieve the Red Brook affordable commitment. This slide shows an overall map of Red Brook, calling out where the affordable are currently located and the future proposed affordable homes. As of today, there are 15 affordable units occupied, all multifamily. There are 10 others currently approved in the existing use areas that are being worked on. There's a total of 73 affordable units that are pending use area approval this spring or summer. This includes 62 senior affordable units and 11 single-family units. The remaining 15 are anticipated to be permitted sometime in early 2025, if not sooner. These are all subject to final use area approvals and subject to revisions based on the permitting process through this board. And as you can see, we kind of color-coded and just called out which use area has which affordable units. The stuff that you see in blue are the Red Brook apartments, where there's 15. You see some village stuff to the north. The pink areas are things that are in process that I just alluded to as far as being proposed. Those are the 73 units, which include the 62 senior affordable and then the 11 single family. They also include the 15 that I referenced, and all that's further south in the pink area. And by all means, as we continue, if there's any questions about the map itself, please let me know. As discussed earlier, the affordable component is tied to TDR usage. The chart below shows a relationship between the timing of requesting TDRs, required affordable, provided affordable, and the percent of which is permitted. TDRs were not first requested until later part of 2017 into 2018 when we started doing attached multifamily products. Through the project completion, the company anticipates using about 568 of the 736 TDRs. In strict reading of the associated bylaws and based on the rounding definitions, that would mean 53 affordable units. With that said, the company did agree to go above and beyond to provide 103 affordable units, And through the senior housing process, we have agreed to create 10 additional units for a total of 113 units. Out of the 113 affordable units, 43 of them, nearly 40%, are now proposed to be at or below 60% AMI, which is well below the required 80% AMI. We want to take a moment to provide an update on the proposed Cranberry Commons. Recently, town meeting overwhelmingly approved $4 million of community preservation funds for the senior affordable project located at Red Brook. We want to take a moment to thank everyone that was involved. It was a collaborative effort with some pains, and we appreciate the support of so many people, including residents of the town, our residents at Red Brook, town officials, elected officials, and other members of the community. This project will deliver 62 deeply affordable units at Red Brook for our seniors. As part of this process, the company agreed, as I noted, to do 10 additional affordable units for the total of 113. More importantly, this partnership provides deep affordability well below the 80% AMI. The lower AMI means lower income requirements and lower rents. The 62 units are comprised of 19 units at or below the 80%, 30 units at or below the 60% AMI, and 13 units at or below the 30% AMI. For perspective, the income limit of a one-person household at 30% AMI, slightly above $32,000 a year, well below the average median income in town. In a likely scenario, this is a person living in a fixed income, such as Social Security or a small pension. Next steps for this project are underway. The Grantham Group anticipates filing with you folks later this spring, late spring, early summer, for site plan review. They're also preparing a pre-application to the Commonwealth right now for the required state funding. If that state funding if the pre-application goes through and they get invited to the final round application, that's an application that would be sometime in September, and the Commonwealth would make a decision sometime the end of this year or the early part of 2025. All indications to date, all conversations to date with Grantham and its state officials is it's looking very positive, so which is a good news. I just wanted to quickly go over this. The Red Brook special permit, it's a land-based, conservation-based community, which increases the density in a smaller footprint. And there's benefits to that all across the board, which I will not go through, as you guys know. This relates to our transfer of development rights. What utilizing TDRs does, and that also does it tied to the affordable component, it also ties to land conservation. And because of this, what we consider a partnership in the utilization of that TDR bylaw, not only relating to affordable. To date, it's created over 1,750 acres of land and preserved permanent conservation restriction, with more to come. And those areas are highlighted in green. These are only the areas located in Plymouth related to this project. The areas that you see in pink and orange are areas that will be placed in conservation restriction, assuming utilization of TDRs. At the end of the project, just on the conservation restriction land itself, you'll have a little north of 2,200 acres. That does not include the open space areas within throughout the community of Red Brook. With that, I'd say thank you, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gorsica. First, I'm going to bring it to the board for any questions or comments that they may have with respect to this. Start with Ms. Keene.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gorsuch. I only have one question, and it's maybe that I misunderstood. So you say on, well, these pages aren't numbered, but Red Brook through completion anticipates 568 out of 736 TDRs. So what you're saying is when you basically turn over Red Brook to the Red Brook residents, only 568 of your TDRs will be used. And what will happen to the remainder of the TDRs?
Yeah.
So those are the two questions I have.
So the TDRs, there's a conversion factor in the Trevor bylaw that talks about a ratio, and it all depends on whether you're doing multifamily attached products or single family. So with the remaining TDRs for 568 of the 736, what is that, 160-ish plus or minus, doing the math on my head? You know, candidly, those are open for discussions. I mean, they're TDRs that were developed, bought, and paid for by the company as part of this project, and I think that's just a conversation that we'll explore. And I'm open to suggestions, by the way, as well.
But you anticipate that at full build-out, and when you turn over Red Brook, it'll be 568, so
That Red Brook is used, yes.
that Red Brook has used. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Donaldson?
So first of all, my first question is to Lee. How does these new units affect our count, or how would it affect our count in regards to, our quota that we should have?
So for the most part, it's a wash, and there are more units being constructed than we're getting affordables. So if it's 10%, if you have 100 units built and you build 10 units, that's a wash. You're not gaining any ground. But with the assisted living and now those units and having all of those count, that's a big jump and a big number that will help our number.
Okay, and so when does that fall on our books, far as
Once it's occupied.
once it's occupied?
Or I would say not necessarily, but once it's constructed. So we're talking about sometime next year, having that
Okay,
added.
and then that will push our count out to how many years far out?
So the only thing, there are two things that could happen, depending on when that comes in and what else is out there for projects. It could help us with a safe harbor for 1 or 2 years.
That's what I'm trying to get to,
Saying
yeah.
no to a 40B. The other thing is it just could count to, and I think I have the number here, maybe I didn't bring it, but we're still hundreds of units short of our 10%. So it will count towards that, but we still have a long way to go to ever get to 10%. But this could help us with the safe harbor from 1 or 2 years.
Okay. Let's see if I took some notes. Hold on 1 second. So as far as the AMI up to 2025, is there any, in other words, what I'm asking is, with inflation after 2025, is there any kind of study or understanding what, if 60% AMI at 2025 will actually end up being 80% AMI after 2025?
Yeah, it just changes from year to year. It's based on what the average income is for this area, which includes Boston and Cambridge. And it's a number set by the government. So it's hard to say what that number will be because it is adjusted. And there are two things. 80% of you have to have affordability that is 80% of somebody's income, but also 80% of the median household price too, depending on which one is higher or lower. So there are two different criteria that you would use. But anyway, it's just set by whatever the income levels are in the region.
All right, and so the next thing I have is just a statement. I really appreciate the efforts of you guys really not just settling for what you're allowed to do. Bringing the AMI down to 60%, really, I really want to commend you on that for doing that. And as you know, I look at, for example, my mother who's on a fixed income and she's in South Carolina and she can barely afford to live in South Carolina. So looking at, saying that the standard of 80% is not feasible right now, I want to commend you, gentlemen, on your efforts and what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Going to go to Mr. Bennett.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Grandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. couple of small questions and comments. When do we anticipate breaking ground on the senior affordable facility?
Yep, so if all goes well with funding sources from a state perspective, they'd be getting an award sometime either end of the year, but Grantham knows they typically stagger into the following. So let's just say they get an award in January. They need about 2 or 3 months to close, and then they would start construction. So an earliest is plus or minus a year from now, maybe 10, 11 months.
And then,
And then from talking to Grantham, they anticipate about a 10 or 12-month construction timeline.
so 2-year time frame.
From today, as far as being occupied, yes.
Right, right. And I think a lot of these questions were asked and answered at different meetings. Are they pre-selling the units or pre-qualifying the units before they're finished?
So I would have to defer with my limited knowledge, and from what I remember, they start the process of the lottery typically about 6 months prior to the building being done.
Gotcha.
There were just to add, there were some questions for those that might be in the audience about the existing wait list for senior housing. They're not allowed to just pluck off that list. They have to file a brand-new lottery.
Understood. Okay, I just want to say, we definitely got to move toward which we have done here, as a public-private partnership with this particular senior affordable building that's being built. But the planning board will be watching this. When do you anticipate being at full build-out?
For their whole entire community?
Correct.
So it's a loaded question only because of market conditions, but as far as full build-out occupied and done,
I'm not going to hold you to it.
no,
but-
no, I understand. So you mean by the last person moving in, right? Because there will still be stuff to do after that fact, so probably 3 to 5 years, depending on market conditions.
Okay, somewhere in that time frame. Again, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and coming in. This is something that not only the board needed to see, but also the residents that are watching on Zoom and some of the residents that are here this evening also. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. So I have a few questions, Mr. Corsica. So I understand it says 15 occupied affordable housing in the Red Brook apartments. How many apartments are there in Red Brook?
Total of that were approved were 288.
So why only 15 occupied as affordable?
Yeah, so going through the use area process is based on 10% of the TDRs that were required.
Okay. Now, moving forward, I understand. So we have the 2019 MOU
Yes.
between ADM and the town, and we have an agreement in there that you're going to keep current on your affordable units as you're creating new market rate units. With this latest, with Grantham, you are now essentially caught up.
Correct.
So as you go forward, I assume then we're going to see concurrently proposals for affordable units matching the 10% number going to market rate. Is that correct?
Yes.
With respect to those units, are there particular, are we focused on one particular type? As your presentation notes, you can use different methodologies for that.
Right.
Is there, and again, obviously, I know market forces, changes, all of that. At this particular time, is there something or multiple things that you are in process of considering as part of the ongoing efforts to meet your final build-out and affordable requirements?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. The interest rates and construction costs aren't a surprise to anyone now. We all live that. So I will candidly, single family is proving very difficult for a variety of reasons, which we can get into if you'd like. We know multifamily at 80% works, but we've also heard people, specifically members of this board, other local officials and residents in town, that 80% necessarily isn't truly, I put that in quotations not because I don't believe it, but just saying not truly affordable. So we have been working and continue to work with a couple organizations that are focused towards lower AMI, that are also focused towards both single-family and multifamily. In full disclosure, the challenge with those things is just strictly time. And I'm confident, maybe this is just the optimist in me. If people don't know me, I'm not truly an optimist, but the optimism in me, I really truly believe working with a nonprofit to get that down to 60% or 65% is the way to go. But again, those take time. We are exploring a concept in the southeast portion of the community with a builder right now that's a combination of single-family homes and multifamily. And when I say multifamily, and I know there's a lot of residents on here, and we do have our annual LOI meeting coming up in a week or 10 days or so, which we'll be talking about this. I'm not talking about massive buildings with 50, 60 units. I'm talking about 8 to 12 units of buildings, something along those frames, but where it fits nicely into a neighborhood, that we can work with people that are a different demographic, a different qualification. And I have to appreciate everyone's patience in this process. I really think one thing that this process has resulted in my honest opinion, is a better result. I know there was pains, I know there was a lot of conversations, but at the end of the day, to get a project like Grantham and to get town meeting support, I think that's overall best for the town. And I think that opens up the door for opportunities, not just for ourselves, but for other developers in town or the town themselves. And I'm hopeful that we can work with something similar, just with a different, maybe a different demographic or a different income bracket. Sorry, I know that was a long-winded answer to say, yes, we're working on it, we're trying, but I take for heart about the 60% AMI. It's just difficult.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Mr. Donaldson.
Sorry, alibi. So I hear a lot of times in regards to senior housing. Has there been any discussion or look at any veteran housing?
So veteran housing, what I would say to you guys, if you know folks, let us know. I actually have a meeting coming up with someone to talk about affordable housing for disabled folks, which I'm sure will include veterans, but we have not specifically talked specifically about veteran housing. If there are organizations that you know or that you folks know people, feel free. Because I think that would be another demographic, another part of the need to target.
Okay, you'll be hearing from me soon.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Okay, at this time, Mr. Hartman.
Yeah, just a comment. We will look to, I don't know if it's 3 months or 4 months, keep this as a continual update. So again, I don't want to just do this one time and be done. I think everybody is aware of the requirement and the intricacies of trying to meet this 103-unit requirement. So again, I think we'll be looking to, as we talk to Dan, schedule this again in 3 or 4 months for another update.
Excellent, thank you. At this time, I'm going to open it up to public comment. I'm going to ask that, again, people, if anyone in the audience first wants to speak, I'm fine with having comment. Keep it to 3 minutes, please, and we are going to focus just on the affordable housing component part of the presentation. Please, Mr. Lydon.
Steve Lydon, I would like to thank the Grantham Corporation and also AD Makepeace. I think they've done a great job providing affordable housing for the seniors, and I'm sure they'll work on other avenues to include the veterans and disabled people. They've done what they said they were going to do, and I'd like to thank AD Makepeace and the Grantham for what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please identify yourself. 3 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Keith Growlin, 4 River Birch Way. I live here in Red Brook. I just have a question from Dan looking at his map. Currently, we have vacant lots in 3 almost completed neighborhoods, Wisteria, Woodlands, and Cranberry Cove. Are those lots going to be developed? Because the people that live in those lots can't have a finished neighborhood until those are completed. Any idea what's happening with those 3 completed neighborhoods?
Well, unless it's an affordable housing issue, maybe that's something you should be taking up at the landowners meeting next week, I believe it is, you said, Mr. Gorsica?
Those are designated for affordable, as far as I know.
Okay, well, I'll ask then, Mr. Gorsica, are those lots designated as for affordable housing?
Yep, so in one of the neighborhoods with Cranberry Cove, there's 3 of them. Those are affordable housing lots. We're in the process of going through the process with SEB Consultants with Eric Pontiff, the builder, to then get that local action unit going and get the process going. Those we were specifically waiting because there was one end of the neighborhood that was waiting on the last transformer, so they have it because he wants to put all 3 on the market. There are 2 of them in the village area with Whitman Homes that is in similar process. The other 5, there's 3 of them in use area, I don't want to screw up the name, in use area 10. In full disclosure, those are one of the ones that we've been trying to work with a nonprofit organization to come up with a creative way to donate them land and then to help provide funding to get at a lower AMI. So right now, the lots right now are loamed and seeded in just an open space lot. I know that's frustrating for residents, but again, I'm trying to creatively get a way to get the lower AMI down. As far as finishing the neighborhoods, if he's alluding to like top coat or what have you, finished landscaping's done everywhere in that neighborhood, and then from a top coat perspective, we always want to wait a little bit anyways, but that won't prohibit us from doing that. It's not ideal to pave and then still build, but those are 3 lots that I'm trying to creatively identify and work with an organization to reduce that AMI. And I know it's frustrating, but I've just asked people to frankly give me some more time. The other 2 that he's talking about, which are in use area 12, candidly, we find ourselves in a situation where our builder owns those lots. They're earmarked as affordable. Not earmarked, they're deeded affordable. The builder owns them. They started foundations and they stopped construction for lack of costing wise. So I find myself now in a position where we have 2 lots in a neighborhood that are owned by a builder that aren't building them. It's disappointing. I'm more disappointed and frustrated than you guys can imagine. Candidly, I'm stuck on those 2. Now, whether that means that when we do a new neighborhood, we allocate them in a different neighborhood, or whether that means from a legality standpoint, I keep pushing that envelope with that builder. Unfortunately, that builder is no longer building homes at Red Brook, so it makes it a bit more complicated. I do know the building department got involved there. They made him put up fencing around the foundations. So it's an unfortunate situation. And I'm just trying to do my best in the most timely fashion that I can to make those 2 proceed.
Thank you for addressing that. I appreciate that. And obviously, that's something that I'm sure the residents can help you in terms of what they would like to see done with that as well. So those further communications, keep those going.
Thank you.
Mr. Gravelin, anything else?
I still just have a question. I haven't heard any kind of commitments about the 6 that have to be built or approved as part of their plan when they go for the new use area coming up next month. So will they have that plan when they present next month for the use area?
Well, I believe when I asked Mr. Gorsuch the question, I said, are you going to have a plan for 6 to keep current? And he told me yes. So I'm going to hold him to that, as he knows I'm going to hold him to that. As members of this board stated in various forums this year, we are going to hold Red Brook to continue to maintain a current count on all of its affordable housing as they approach new use areas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gravelin. Anyone else on Zoom?
This is Maury Ryan. I have a question, several questions actually.
Please proceed.
Thank you, committee chair and committee members. I'm delighted to be able to have the opportunity to hear this update. I'm not hearing much conversation about family housing, and I'm curious as to the units that are being designated as affordable. We know that the 62 units will be senior housing and therefore not available as family housing. How are we meeting the needs of families in Plymouth in this plan?
Okay, why don't you ask, and your other, I know you said you had several questions, so why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we'll ask Mr. Gorsuch to respond.
My second question goes to this calendar on page 4 that shows 2024 and 2025 with numbers with them being complete by what looks like the end of 2025. And I'm really curious about this because you've just said that you're going to hold them accountable to the count, and yet the 73 that's designated for 2024 consists of the 62 units of the affordable housing from the Grantham project. And we've just heard that the Grantham project is not going to get full funding, should the funding come from the state, until late this year with a 2-year build out. So 2 years from now. So I'm curious how we can take credit for this in 2024 when the completion is not going to be until sometime in 2026. And the 15 units that are shown, assumably in 2025, are for an area that has yet to even be permitted and would be assumably a 10 to 12 month build out from the fact that it's just a forest today. So I'm just curious how the credit is being taken here in this time frame when we're interested in holding them accountable before they, go and ask for other things. So can we get some clarity on that as well?
Okay, anything further?
Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Gorsica.
Thank you. So as far as family housing, again, how do I want to say this? One of the organizations that we are working with are geared towards family housing. I would leave it at that. The other organization that was brought to our attention, ironically, by a resident in Redbrook who works with them, is focused on disabled folks. So no, I understand Mari's comment about family housing. So that is one of the partnerships we're trying to do. When a regular single family goes on the market, when the qualifications go out, it's based on, bedroom sizes, incomes, this, that, and the other thing. Grantham's a little different because it's an age-restricted community, but when it comes to the regular single family, we don't dictate who moves into those. Now, I will tell you our affordable units with Eric Pontiff are larger homes, so chances are those are also going to be families. As far as the timing on the build-out, I understand the comment. I think what's important for people to know and understand, when we permit a use area, that doesn't get built today or tomorrow. A neighborhood like, let's just go back to the one that we just filed a submission on. I believe it's 54 units. A neighborhood like that will take 2 or 3 years to build out. And what I'm hearing and what we're going to be doing is during that duration of that build out in that use area, those affordables are going to be on track and built in accordance with the way a permit is. So not everything is necessarily permitted and then counted for. I think that's what she's getting at. For an example, for Grantham, which is a little unique, yes, that's also a 2-year process, but after 2 years, you get 62 right away. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as the timing perspective. We get a permit approval, but that use area itself takes years to build out, and that's all dependent on market conditions. You could have 50 homes take a year or 2. You could have it take 4 years.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a follow-on question, and this goes to Mr. Donaldson's concern about, when do we get to see all of these units added to the inventory for the town? And this chart on page 4 talks about permitting, but it doesn't really talk to when we're going to see those added to the town's inventory. So I'm wondering if there's a way to update this so we have a sense of when they really have meaning to the town in terms of those counts.
Perhaps we can include that with our next update. And obviously, maybe that's something that you want to address directly with the landowners when you have your meeting.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Ryan?
That's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, I'll take one more if there's one more online. Anyone else? Well, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, next on our agenda is ZBA 4127, 25 Dorothy Drive. Catherine Miller, special permit required per section 203-1C and per section 205-2, rural residential, and dimensional table to waive side and rear setback to construct a detached garage. And the planning board is advisory to the ZBA on this, so we'll be issuing an advisory vote tonight, and the ZBA will be the final authority. Good evening.
Hello.
Why don't you identify yourselves for the record, please?
Sure, I'm Steve Miller.
Welcome. So, what would you like to tell us about your request?
We're just requesting to build a detached garage, to house our various things that are currently taking up space in the yard. That's about it.
So we got the land surveyed in the beginning, so we want to do everything by the book. So we got a land surveyor, he came out, he marked everything, he gave us plans, and then we gave that to a tree guy, he took trees down, and then we had an architect come in, and then he said, you can't be that close to the property line, and that was a shock to us. We didn't know, we already sunk all this money into this project, and so now here we are. Now we're asking for your mercy, and please let us build a garage.
Your neighbors that we talked about, your neighbors?
Yeah,
We've talked to our neighbor, yeah, we have a lot of, like neighborhood barbecues, hang a pretty close-knit neighborhood. We're right near Red Brook, or Dorothy Drive, I'm sure you guys know, off Halfway Pond there,
the
so.
neighbors are thrilled that we took down all the disease.
Yes, they're happy, they keep getting compliments about how we've, everything looks great, we're doing good, and so we know that nobody that we know has any issue with us building it, and so now we just are asking for permission.
Okay, great. Staff?
So, again, we see a number of these, and oftentimes the setbacks are a little tighter. If you look at the aerial we provided, you can see that this sits pretty nicely. It doesn't encroach upon a lot of the living spaces of any of the abutting people. The setbacks are still 15 feet. So again, based on what we've heard and what we see, we're recommending that you provide a favorable recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, if the board has no objections, let me open it up to the public first. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter? Anyone in the room? Seeing no one. Anyone on Zoom? Seeing no one. I will bring it back to the board. Mr. Bennett?
See, one of the conditions recommended by the engineering department is to show proposed grading. Has that been addressed at this point?
We just have the grading that's on we have the elevation that's on the plot plan, and the proposed grading is on the driveway, and then up in the back is, it's all been flattened out, it's clear, it's, I don't have any.
I don't have like an engineered
Yeah,
drawing.
I don't have an engineer.
So the recommendation from the town
Is to get
engineers
it.
to have you show that for the ZBA.
Okay.
I would recommend that you have that, and
For the zoning meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
sure. So your surveyor should be able to provide that for you.
Sure.
It doesn't look terribly complicated, but you can't have one corner of the garage be at 132 feet and the other one be at 135.
Sure.
You need a flat
Okay.
spot.
Okay,
Fair enough.
thank you.
That's all I have.
Ms. Keene?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think it said that on your design that your septic system should be on the design itself so that we could see where it's located, not only the tank and the D-box, but the leaching field.
Okay.
Because that will make a difference. But I have a question about the driveway itself, and if you've considered maybe making it a gravel or pea stone driveway so that you don't increase the impervious surface in that area, and if you would consider that, and if your septic system or leaching field is close, it would be helpful to your neighbors and yourself if it was.
So we don't have any intention of paving the driveway.
Oh, wonderful. It doesn't show here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the septic system is actually on the other side of the property, so it's located over here. So it's, and the leaching field is over here, so it's nowhere near the proposed garage.
Good, so it's going to remain a pervious surface.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Grandy?
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm jealous. You're building a storage shed, and I need one myself. I would agree with Ms. Keene as far as the gravel driveway is concerned. And I would suggest that that be in our suggestion to the Zoning Board of Appeals as part of the approval process, that that does not become a paved or concreted, impervious driveway. But again, I'm jealous, and yes, you do need to supply what the engineering department has asked for as far as showing a septic system, D-box, storage tank, field, and the contours, obviously. So,
We will.
other than that, I wish you a lot of luck. And again, I'm jealous because I need one myself. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Donaldson?
So you did do proper notice to your neighbors, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure because it sounded like you talked to them, you guys barbecued, and they said it was okay. I just want to make sure that you had it in there, that you did do proper notice, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. So I'll echo, my only concern had been ultimately seeing how long that driveway could conceivably be and why it was so far back. But obviously, if it remains as a pervious surface, that's less of an issue. I can also say that having driven through the neighborhood and seen your home and your neighbors, I saw sheds, garages, above-ground pools, everything right up against various property lines. So this is certainly not anything that is atypical of the neighborhood. So with that, I have no real questions of you.
All right. That's good.
Anything else from any other member of the board? Seeing nothing, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve ZBA 412725 Dorothy Drive with the conditions for the driveway.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, with staff's recommendations, along with the driveway.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. All in favor of recommending approval? It is unanimous. Good luck. Good luck at the ZBA. Make sure you get those additional documents. They will ask for them.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda tonight, ZBA 4128, 9 Collins Ave, M3 Ventures, Inc., special permit required per section 203-16.5 to waive the number of allowed marijuana establishment signs, to install a secondary architectural sign, and per 203-3D1, Table 1, to waive maximum size of a secondary architectural sign, to install a secondary architectural sign. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Bennett, welcome. My name is Bill Sims. I am representing M3 Ventures, which is the operating entity of what is known as the Triple M Dispensary on 9 Collins Ave in the Industrial Park. Just by way of a brief history, if you haven't seen it or heard already, the zoning board approved marijuana establishment, I think it was project back in, 2018 or so. Existing conditions right now as far as signage is concerned, there is a front facade sign, 36 by 84, and there's a freestanding sign at the entrance and nothing else. The petition proposes that we have 2 secondary architectural facade signs. First one, and excuse me, let me introduce, I'm sorry, Ms. Carrie Garofalo, who was with Brenner Signs, and she will be able to explain the details of the signage and answer any questions that the board or the public may have. So as I said, we've got just two small signs at the front of the building, 36 by 84, and a freestanding sign at the entrance. We're looking for two secondary architectural facade signs. One is facing east towards Route 3, and the second one is facing north, and both will be halo lit. And I think when we get to that point, very briefly, I'll have Carrie explain exactly what you'll be looking at and what we're proposing. So under 203-16.5, we need two waivers. One is the number of signs allowed, which is, we're requesting two, and the second is under 203-3.1 to waive the maximum size of the second architectural sign, which is in total, I think, if my numbers are correct, I think we total 115, and we're over that required number by about 75, I believe, if my math is right. Plans were submitted to fire engineering. Neither had objections or comments. If you look at the proposed signage, I think you will see, as Carrie will explain, they're both complementary, appropriate, especially when you consider the size of the building and the size of the signs compared to the size of the building. I also think the design, in at least my opinion anyway, is tasteful, subtle. The lighting component with the halo lit, loud here in Plymouth, will not be, indirect and will not present any form of adverse effect on the neighborhood. I mean, we are in the industrial park, so I don't expect any issues there. And with that, I'll let Carrie explain to you what we have in terms of signage, and let her address any questions that the board and the public may have.
Good evening. So the backer panels are 2-inch thick aluminum backer panels that we will attach 3-inch aluminum letters to that are halo lit on the inside that stand off that aluminum board. And on the back, this backer panel that is right here will be the same color as the building, so it won't be a different color. And then once we do that, these stand off the aluminum panels and they'll be halo lit. You'll be able to see that off of Route 3 a little better. I'm not sure if you guys have any other questions about how they're made or. Oh, all right, yep, oops, sorry. All right, so this is the north facing one, right? No, that's the east. So this is east, and this was taken a bit far back so you could see what it would look like further back from a distance. And that is, it's 40 square foot sign, 125 foot of frontage. That's the day view from the highway. And this is east day view, so the other one's night view. This one is the north facing one. 75 square feet, same exact thing, 2-inch aluminum backer panel, 3-inch aluminum letters, halo lit. Showing like evening.
Yeah, I think that's the north view.
85 feet of frontage on the front of that.
Okay. Staff?
So if this was a normal retail use, these signage proposals would be fairly consistent with what the town has approved in the past. But because it's marijuana and the bylaw says only one, that's why they're before you. So again, I don't think it's very different than what we would have seen for other retail uses. The other thing that I know this board has talked about a lot was visibility of things from Route 3. Now, I'll put my economic development hat on and tell you that we have seen a dramatic decrease in revenue from the marijuana facilities we have in town, and a lot of that is because of competition. And again, I think this is the type of thing from an economic development standpoint, helping to identify this use, this location for all those people going to the Cape. So I think it's a good thing from an economic development standpoint, but you as a board will have to decide whether you think it's appropriate by size. And also, again, I know there is some sensitivity to what is and is not visible from Route 3 in the community.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open up for public comment if there's anyone in the room who wishes to speak first. Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom?
Anyone seeking to be recognized?
Okay, then I'm going to bring it to the board. Mr. Grandy.
Okay. First, I smoked this over a little bit, pardon the pun, right?
Appreciate that, yeah, for sure.
Obviously, with economic development, I think it's very important that businesses be recognized. So with this backlighting with the LEDs, it's not considered internally illuminated, correct? No.
It's a very standard type of lighting we have all over town. It's
Okay.
pretty typical these days.
Well, anything to help business in town, and this is in the industrial park, I'm in favor of. My only concern, asking staff here, is how many other facilities do we have in town that only have one sign? Do you think they'll be coming into us? I know the zoning board is making the final decision, but are the other facilities?
So I think right now the only other one that's operational is off of Richards Road in the industrial park, and I don't think that has any visibility. The visibility would be from Route 44, but that's down below, so additional signage on that would not make any sense. There is one in Camelot Industrial Park too, and that's again off of a side road with no visibility from any other major roads.
Okay.
Possibility for a fourth one, but who knows when that might happen.
Right. Okay. Thank you for answering the questions. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Ms. Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So have you noticed that your business model, well, you're here representing the business, but have they been affected by the decrease in?
Without any real first-hand information, I can tell you that my best estimation is yes, there's been declining revenues. The highly competitive industry now, regulation has loosened and they're everywhere. And I think this particular dispensary has very, I don't know the exact form in which it was rated.
We've seen the revenue drop by 50% for all the marijuana facilities in the town. So it's a 50% decreases. That's the last time I heard, which was probably, it was several months ago, but it was a very significant number.
Yeah, so basic business when there's extraordinary revenues to be made, the competitors come in. But one thing that you have is the medical marijuana portion. I mean, it's one of the first, it is the first that came into Plymouth with medical marijuana before the law was opened up to. So it's a rather well-known dispensary, and you have a grow facility there too, I understand, or no? This one does not have the grow facility. It's just
No, there's a grow facility there.
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's a comprehensive marijuana establishment. And I think with that, it is comprehensive. It does have the medical component to it and the retail component to it. So here's my first question. As you're driving from the north, will your north sign will be visible to those driving on Route 3 from the north?
That's the basic premise of, the design, is that it will be seen. It'll be discreet to a certain extent. It will be tasteful, but it will be seen. It's not going to be as big as other signs that you can see coming south that this board has approved in the past.
Yeah.
And Kingston has approved, but it will be visible. It will hopefully attract what we hope will be additional business, and which in turn will bring revenue to the town. So yes, that's the idea, is that we've been very quietly established with no signage that can be seen from Route 3 since 2018, I believe. So it's time now that we be competitive and address, the marketing issues that we need to.
Yeah, and then your east sign, you anticipate will be a second sign that people will see that are driving south, or they'll see it when they're driving north on Route 3? Who is your target market for the north sign? I mean, the east sign?
So facing north will be, where were you, who's traveling on the north side? So east is clearly what you're going to see from Route 3 traveling south. Okay, that's facing directly out towards Route 3.
Right. So then
that's the target audience that we're looking for. The people
traveling south towards the Cape.
Driving south towards the Cape, and that's what we're looking for. The north side, I
Yeah,
think,
what's
just being Carrie, maybe you can address better why.
Who are you attracting with what business are you attracting with the north sign?
So then, is this the north side? Yep. And what's that facing? Yeah, what are we looking at from here? Is it the parking area on the side?
I mean, it's not a spot where a lot of people go into, I mean, Pack TV is there, and...
If I'm looking at this the way I have visited the property, I believe the north side is on the parking side of the building. So as you are driving by on Collins, you can see that signage and then turn it.
Can we show my screen, please, on the...
Yeah, do you have something better?
Yeah, I'd like to just understand the two-sign concept as opposed to a one-sign concept.
So this is just, so the building is behind these trees, and again, this is 23. As you're coming northbound, you have a series of trees.
Yeah, it looks pretty frightening, actually. Yeah.
Google Earth.
From about that amount of time. You have some tree cover.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on in Collins Avenue with, the Spencer project there that looks like the big dig right now. And so I'm just wondering if when that is at full build out, or when they finish that project, is that going to impact this? I mean, people are driving supposedly at 60 miles an hour, probably 70 to 80. So they're kind of whipping by there. And during the day, I'm not sure how easily you can see these signs. Certainly at night you can, because, and I'd have, it's very tastefully done. I think you've done a wonderful job with the sign. My question is, would one sign do it? Because we're loading that area up with all sorts of things, and what would be the business justification? And is my question.
So
it's not like get off at exit 13 and drive. I mean, stop here, turn here. It's not like wall drugs, when you're out west.
No, understood. I think the primary sign, which is the east-facing one, which you'll see from Route 3, will be an ability for drivers heading south on 3 to acknowledge and see what's there.
Right.
And we're not trying to direct traffic like Wall Drug does.
Right.
We're just trying to get some acknowledgement for that. I can't predict what the final will look like when the Spencer project is completed. and I was involved with that, but I don't know, but we can only do what we can do with our building.
Right.
So I'm not gonna put a billboard on top of our building and come before you and ask for that. So we can only do what we can do. I can hope that it'll be visible. I can hope that the north side will be visible, and it'll help the growth of the business and, provide some visibility, for the location. And I think if people see that, eventually they'll figure out how to get there.
Yeah. So again, I'm very amenable to the east-facing sign, but I think as far as incremental growth, that the north-facing sign might just be one too much for an area that's being completely disturbed at this point. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, two aspects of this that I want to discuss are the aesthetic aspect. So I've looked at this, I think, for the past 3 days, because I come home that way, and I think that both signs will very likely be visible at the same time. The north-facing sign is really going to be the one you're going to see as you're coming down Route 3, and then the east-facing sign, as you get closer to it, perhaps you look over. I have not noticed it on my way north in the mornings, but I have noticed this big blue box over there that looks very industrial, and I think that the signs are tastefully done, and I think the aesthetics are actually going to be improved, as well as be informative to what is that industrial building over there. From the economic development aspect, I am highly in favor of it. I think you have pretty stiff competition sign square footage-wise just up the street in Kingston, right,
Yes.
right next to Lowe's. So I think their sign is, and I didn't measure it, but I think it's substantially larger than what you're proposing here, or at least based on the distance, the perspective would be. So I think I'd be in favor of the whole project, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donaldson?
Okay, so I'm probably going to split it baby in half on this. My concern is, well, first of all, what other dispensary grows in Plymouth as well?
I would have to pull out the whole list. We have a number of facilities in the towns. We have transportation facilities, we have grow-only facilities, we have retail. I don't recall whether the other facilities approved have grow also. I'd have to look at that spreadsheet.
All right. So to be fair to the other facilities, if there's another facility that meets that same criteria, we want to make sure that we're going to be giving them the same leeway that we'll be giving this petitioner. So then my other question is, this extra signage, how vital is it to, in your opinion, to the development? I mean, to the building?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
I think both signs are critical. There's nothing there right now. And these signs, relative to the scope and size of the building, are not monstrous. They are, they fit well within the design, and they'll provide a lot of access, potentially, if the signage is allowed. Again, the north-facing side, yes, you can probably see it. I did not do a scope evaluation myself, but I think you might be able to see it. But it's the east-facing one that is big, but I think the other side will be able to attract additional visibility as well. So I think they're both critically important, especially as Mr. Hartman mentioned, given the current economic climate, declining revenue, if we can boost this at all with some signage, and again, there's nothing right now other than front entrance stuff, so I think it'll be pretty huge.
And both signs on both sides are going to be the same size? Or
No, they're a little different, actually. Go ahead.
That's fine. The east facing it's 139 inches, so it's 40 square feet, and then the north facing is 75 square feet, which is 190 inches long. And it is 57 inches high, and then The east-facing one is 40 inches high,
Okay.
so they're not,
So you're putting all your eggs in the one that's going south, facing people that are heading
Well, they're
south?
both important, but they're not overwhelming.
No, I'm going to agree with you in regards to the size, and especially for the fact that the distance it is from the highway and you want to be seen. I get that. I understand that. But my pushback is allowing extra signage of what you've already allowed, due to the fact, next thing, as Mr. Grandy alluded to, is in this environment, are we opening up a can of worms or a door for other petitioners to be asking the same thing? And if it's going to, I understand for where you are, it fits. I get that. I understand that. Just as my concern is the Pandora box that we may be opening by allowing more signage.
So every project is different. Every site and location is different. If you're tucked away in Camelot, you know, your signage is going to be radically different than what we're looking for. We have the potential for exposure to the public from main thoroughfares, and it's very, very different than what you might be looking for signage in a different place, you know, such as Camelot. They're not going to be, you know, as visible as we are. We got a chance to have some exposure on both the north and east sides, and I think it's critical. And I think that it's strategically important for not just the business itself, but again, you know, I don't want to continue to harp on it, but again, the, you know, the economic value of increased revenue certainly can't be overlooked.
And I just have one last comment. So, with you're saying that the competition is very high right now. So I also believe that not just for you, but for the other competition, we have to make sure that we're not giving other individuals extra added, what's the word I'm looking for? Advantage. Thank you, Ms. Keene. Advantage that would prohibit or hurt the other businesses as well. I think that's something we also have to take in consideration.
And I don't disagree with you, but again, each petition that's before you is unique. It has to be evaluated on several levels. The structure itself, the size of the sign, the proposed location of signage, where the building is sited, how it's going to affect others in the area. So I think as advisory, you have to look at this and say, well, this one is in a very different spot than some of the others. And let's look at Kingston. What's Kingston doing just, a half mile up the roadway? They've got some serious signage as well. So I think...
Well, they have some different zoning as well.
They do. But again, I'm looking for Plymouth, and I'm working for Plymouth and businesses in Plymouth and the town of Plymouth. And I think that, given the proposal before you, I think it's reasonable. I think it's tastefully designed. It fits. It works. I don't know what anybody else is going to come. Maybe the existing businesses in Plymouth are very satisfied with what they've got for signage. I don't know, and I can't predict. But I think as far as this petition goes, I think the board should give a favorable recommendation on this one, because I think it's very little to detract from, other than what you're looking for is an anticipatory reaction from other businesses. I don't know if that's going to happen. Like I said, every project is unique, every location is unique, and this is one that is basically, in a spot unlike any of the others in town, with the potential for visibility and attracting business. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. I recognize that this is a unique location. I'm not going to consider this in light of anybody else's. I'm considering this with respect to this particular site. We have two competing interests here. We have the economic development factor, which is something that the town definitely wants to encourage, At the same time, we also have a practice and a goal from a lot of people of limiting the visibility of signage from Route 3, especially from something that appears to be more industrial, and particularly, obviously, with respect to this particular type of facility. That's something that's said. Now, again, the town approved these types of facilities. The town had the opportunity, the voters had the opportunity to say, no, we do not want these facilities in town. They didn't go that way. They said they want these facilities, so they have to expect and understand that these facilities are going to be there. That said, these are also not facilities which you're, as you say, this is not something that you're looking to advertise for drive-up business. That's not the particular goal, as people are whizzing by at whatever extraordinary speeds they may be doing on Route 3, or stuck in traffic for that matter. So I'm torn between those two particular interests. One of the things that's particularly focused my attention, however, is looking at the night views. Because as you say, this is not something that you're trying to attract people to drive up to during evening hours. Not dispensary hours. They're not going to be there. So having a brightly lit sign going in the middle of the night, visible from Route 3, is not something that I find particularly appealing for the town. Is there a particular reason that we're focusing on the illumination side versus just simply having a sign visible during the day?
Well, I mean, there's probably a host of, discussion items we could have on that. I mean, you want to talk about traffic patterns and who's driving when and where, and just putting a sign up without the halo lighting, which is permitted in this town, I think would be doing an extreme, disservice to the project. I think that, as I've explained and as you can see, that halo lighting is just, I don't even know exactly what the distance is. You'll actually be able to see that, but it is not a spotlight. It is not, it's not going to distract drivers or anything like that. I think it just sort of highlights very quietly, nicely, and professionally, the location of the business, and that's it. I don't think we could possibly do this project without the halo lighting. It would be, so many months a year you wouldn't see anything, and that would be a real detriment to the business.
I understand your point on that, but at the same time, I think a constant on light. So the recommendation, the suggestion has been posed that perhaps we consider hours of operation for a lighted sign.
So like he had mentioned, when it is halo lit, it is not like a spotlight. So it just pretty much emphasizes the letters that are there and gives a subtle lighting to it. It is not, by all means, going to be a distraction of any sort.
I understand. I am familiar with what a halo light is. I'm familiar with the signage that we have throughout town. But we at the same time also discourage this from Route 3. So I'm looking at balancing these two competing needs. But that's fine. I think we'll leave it there. I don't have any further questions for you, so we're fine. Thank you. Anything further? All right, well, Mr. Grandy, then Ms. Keene.
Yes. I lean a little bit toward what the other members are saying here, and I would suggest that your lighting go on a timer. Any facility that's open, dispensary, how long is the dispensary open for, and what are the hours? Are they open till 10 p.m.?
I don't have the answer to that.
I believe it's 9 p.m.
You believe it's 9. So if you put your, if whatever we recommend, its final decision is with the zoning board of appeals. But I don't think you need those two building lights on at 2 a.m. in the morning. Right? And if I had my druthers, if you had your druthers, which one of the building signs would you prefer? If you had to eliminate one, which one would you think of keeping, and which one would you think of maybe not putting on the building? I'm asking a hypothetical question here.
Well, it's unfortunately not my decision. You know, I don't operate the business. I don't own the building. You know, my recommendation is that, you know, both signage are needed. In terms of lighting, I don't disagree with you that, you know, daytime hours for sure probably do not need to be halo lit, and probably save some electricity money on that as well. But I really can't speak for the business in terms of eliminating. From my personal perspective, which is not to be taken as speaking on behalf of either the building owner or, you know, I think the east-facing sign is clearly the more important one, although, as I've said,
Is the east-facing sign the larger of the two?
I think
No, the
it's
north,
not the
north is the
larger,
larger
but
one.
it's the one that faces Route 3.
But you feel the east-facing sign is the most important as far as residents or whoever's driving by, whether they're not residents, heading down the Cape, coming from the north, heading south, to be able, so you're advertising the business. I understand you're trying to increase your revenues. Which sign, if you had your druthers, would you want to keep on the building, is my question.
The one that's facing Route 3, whether it's called east, north, or south, that's the one.
Whichever one is facing Route 3.
Yeah, that's the
correct?
most important one. That's where we're going to see the most traffic.
Okay.
And so that is the one that would be.
So you've answered my question, and again, I'm in favor of economic development, but you got to weigh the situation here and looking at this overall. So we're still in that discussion right now. Thank you.
Ms. Keen.
Thank you. So you've come to us about a business development proposal for 3M, Triple M. And every business development that I've been professionally involved with, particularly with marketing, there's actually numbers that are behind this. So you have an expenditure, and you're going to have to break even on that expenditure with increased business. And there's, obviously, we all know many ways to increase business. Pricing is another, things like that. So this facility has been around a long time. It's the only medical facility in Plymouth for marijuana. So it has a presence already in the, at least, medical community, and it's maybe, like every business, struggling for new business, but there may not be new business. In other words, the market may be saturated. And I don't know what numbers you're representing, because we have no numbers in front of us. We just have a concept that if you put up a sign, people will come. But that may not be the case. And so we will, at the nighttime, be illuminating, again, in our town, when we are a town. Yeah. So I think all of us are circling around the same sort of argument here, and we're trying to come at it from very different ways. That this may not achieve your goal. We have no numbers in front of us to say what your predictions are, what your business development model has, if you're decreasing prices to go with it, or how it's working. And I understand that you don't have access to that. You're here for the sign. But we didn't get it either. So there's so many question marks yet. And so we're all trying to tailor-make it for you so that you have some success, but that we feel that it's appropriate.
I understand that, and I think what you mentioned just a minute or two ago is reputation. The reputation is there, but the presence is not. So there's a big difference between, yes, we were the first one and we are medical, but we don't have the presence that we need. So I don't know how far the reputation expands the community, outside the community. And again, you know, we're projecting, it's a simple starting point for marketing and establishing more traction and notoriety to a business location. I can't, and I don't think anybody can say what we are going to establish in terms of growth, you know, exponential or none at all, but I think we need to establish a presence there, and that's really where we're going.
Yeah, but
Ms. Kuhn.
that would not be marketing if you did not know what you were trying
I
to,
don't know
who your target audience is, how fast do they drive, why are they...
Not my area, and I don't know.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think, did you run this by the local village steering committee?
No, I don't think so. It's industrial park, I don't think there's a typical request for that, but, and I don't see anybody that would oppose it. I've been involved with projects in the industrial park, so I don't imagine this would be something that would, you know, create any significant opposition.
Okay. Thank you. So I heard the comment to this from the side here, what can we craft? And I think that's a correct analysis, where we as a board are clearly listening to the discussion here, attempting to come up with something that meets at least some of the needs that you've established and requested, while at the same time addressing some of the concerns that we have. I've crafted something, and this is out for discussion. This is never, so I have suggested that we recommend approval. I had said of the east-facing sign. However, I'm perfectly comfortable with otherwise saying we recommend approval of one additional sign, leaving it to them to decide, subject to a caveat that there's a limit on the time that the lighting is on. I would suggest no later than 9:30 p.m., giving them a half an hour from the time after the dispensary closes, to at least allow for people to spend some time to be there and to do the shutdown. That's my suggestion for discussion amongst the board. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Ms. Keene?
So I'm thinking that with that, the business itself will maybe change its presentation a little bit to the ZBA and get more information and more numbers on their business model if we make exactly that. One additional sign, it doesn't place a burden on our giving an advantage, which addresses Carl, because it's one sign, et cetera. So for me, I like what you've crafted.
Okay.
I mean, I would be in agreement with that.
Anyone else? Thoughts?
So just one word of caution. If a sign starts going on at midnight or 2 in the morning, it's enforced through the building department. 98% of the people comply with these types of requirements, but just be aware that if all of a sudden there's an issue identifying it, having somebody go out at 2 in the morning to witness it, it will be a little bit of a progress. But again, I think most people will adhere to these requirements.
I have no doubt that any requirement would be adhered to, and obviously if there is something that happens that's unusual and someone complains, it at least gives us a basis to inquire further. But I appreciate the note of caution, Mr. Hartman. With that then, does someone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve one sign at the discretion of the petitioner, and that the lighting be placed on a timer for the building sign, and it is to be set to be shut off at 9:30 p.m. So when I'm coming from the north, driving south at 11 o'clock, I might be the one calling that the sign is on. So, I'm just joking. I see you smiling. I'm glad you're smiling.
So I assume it's 9:30 to daylight?
Yes.
Sunrise?
Correct.
Yeah. That's my motion, and
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Donaldson. Any further discussion? None. Seeing none, I will take a vote. All in favor of recommendation? It is unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Our other item of business on the agenda is the monthly master plan update. The next master plan committee meeting is a week from today, 6 p.m. here at Town Hall. It will be, as all of our meetings have been, in person with a Zoom option for those who wish to attend remotely. The main topic of discussion will be a presentation by our consultant as to where they stand on the thousands of pages of information we have been giving them, their initial communications with some of the town staff as they have done their first round of discussions, and the plan for the public kickoff event, which is scheduled for June the 20th to be held at Plymouth South Middle School. And we will be discussing as a committee all efforts that we possibly can to get people to come and attend, to hear the plan, and to participate. There is a proposal, and that the consultant will be doing some sort of a community exercise as a first step to give the community an idea of the types of things that they will be seeing during this process. And I hope every member of this committee gets out the word and speaks to all of their constituents and other groups that they are involved with and encourages people to attend.
How is the June 20th? How are they proposing advertising it to the general public?
That's question number one. That is one of the things that the committee will be discussing. Certainly, we're going to be doing it by the standard approach of essentially they will be putting out what they can through the town. But I think we're going to need, as we are limited in terms of paid advertising at all now in this community, sadly, as we do not have a print newspaper. The goal will, of course, be to ask all of our Facebook, certainly through social media, but also to ask all of our media sources, whether that be the local scene, the Plymouth Independent, WATD, even the Old Colony Memorial, and any other sources that we can come to hopefully at least announce it, if not do an actual piece on it by speaking to hopefully the ideas that's going on. And I know that the consultant is going to be preparing a press release for the committee to review so that we can all agree as to a common message as to going out. But again, the encouragement is to get people to come so they understand what the master plan process is going to look like in general, and to give their input as to what additional things they may like to see as far as getting community input.
So the gap analysis also include an appendix of various different groups, civic groups in the town too, and we're spending a fair amount of time compiling an email list for all of those groups too. So that would be another part of the blast.
Yeah. So the goal is essentially to send this to as many people as we can conceivably think of who might have an interest in attending. So if there are any additional suggestions or ideas, we would love to hear them. Please send them on. Okay, is there any other business for tonight? Mr. Grandy?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, with a
Second.
caveat of go Celtics.
I will second go Celtics. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.